To cut out the skirt facing pattern, first you need to have fabric that has a fold in it, that is folded in half and it has a folded edge. Then take your pattern, the one that is place on fold with the arrows going toward the edge of the fabric, and place that on the fold. There shouldn't be any fabric showing at the edge of the pattern. You have another place on fold piece that also needs to be put right at the edge of the fabric. And then when you have a straight of grain like this, it just has to be the grain line parallel to the selvage, but not actually on the fold. So these pieces can go here. And then take tailoring chalk and draw your outline and cut out your pieces, making sure not to cut out the fold. When you're finished those pieces, you're going to interface the two facing pieces. So again, the fold one goes on the folded edge, and the straight of grain is lined up straight, but not against the edge of the fold. You're going to use the steamer to apply interfacing to your facing pieces. When you iron it on, it will stiffen your fabric. So take the interfacing and place it rough side down on top of your fabric. Place the iron over it and apply heat and pressure to glue that in place. When you do it, make sure the smooth side is up, because the rough side contains little dots of glue that will steam right to the steamer. So some heat, some pressure, some steam, and then the interfacing will glue right to the facing and stiffen the fabric. Now we're ready to sew our sample. We'll start with the bottom of the skirt. We're going to pretend we have a zipper here. We're not actually going to sew a zipper, but about a third of the way down, I've double pinned it so I remember to start there. I'll line it up against the 1 centimeter seam allowance. On samples, we only sew them on 1 because they're small enough already. We don't sew them on the 15 like we do our projects. Put the foot down, put the needle down, remove those 2 pins. Sew a stitch or 2, reverse back 3 to 4, and then sew to the edge of the fabric, keeping the foot against the 1. When you get to the end, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches and back to the edge without sewing off the edge of the fabric. Pull both threads long, cut those threads at the beginning and end of the seam, and now I'm ready to sew the 2 sides together. So this is now considered my wrong side because I can see the seam. And where I don't see the seam, that is the good side. So this is going to get pinned and sewn good to good the whole length of the other side. I'm pinning front to back, and I'll sew both seams against the 1. So again, line it up, so a stitch or 2, reverse back 3 to 4, and sew both sides the same way. So I'm on my second side seam, near the end, sewing it at the 1, go all the way to the end, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches, and again to the end. Lift the needle, lift the foot, cut those threads. And now I have the bottom of the skirt sewn, both sides and the center back, leaving room for the zipper, pretend zipper. Now we'll sew the facings. I've pinned them good to good. I'm going to leave the opening where I would put the zipper, but sew the 2 sides. So line it up to the 1, foot down, stitch or 2, reverse back, sew to the edge. Sew the other side the same way, and then go press all of those seams. You'll have 5 in total. To press the sample, I'm going to use the sleeve board so that I can fit the skirt inside and be able to get at that seam. First, open the seam flat with your fingers, and then take the steamer, move your fingers out of the way, and press that seam open and flat. Press all 3 seams on the bottom of the skirt. First on the bad side and then flip it over, do it on the good side. And also press the 2 seams of the facing. First with your fingers, open and flat on the bad side, and then turn it around and press it on the good side. All 5 seams should be pressed open and flat. To sew the facing to the skirt, I've pinned it good to good, making sure that I line seam to seam. Now I'm going to free arm the machine, pull the extension table off, and slide the skirt inside so that I don't risk sewing the skirt closed. Line it up at the start, keeping the edge of the fabric against the one. Near the top, needle down, foot down, sew a stitch or two, reverse back, remove the first pin, and sew all the way around against the one, removing pins as I need, and making sure I don't sew the skirt shut. When I get to the end, I reverse back a few stitches, lift the needle, lift the foot, cut those threads, cut the original threads at the beginning, and then bring it to the steamer to press that seam. We're going to use the tailoring ham to press this facing. Slide it inside, and normally you would press a seam open and flat, but for the facing I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to press the seam up and flat. So grab the steamer, watch your fingers, press that part and then move it so that you can get access to the next part. Flatten it, pressing that seam up and flat. Do it all the way around and then flip it over to the good side, turn it right side out, stick it inside the tailoring ham and press on the good side so that there are no creases or ridges or wrinkles and that seam is pressed entirely up and flat. Our next step in sewing this facing to the skirt is to understitch it. So you're going to keep the fabric inside out, slide it inside the free arm, and then you're going to sew a line very close to that stitching line. So start at the beginning of the skirt, stitch or two, reverse back, all the while keeping this nice and tight. And sew all the way around until you get to the end. And when you're finished, you should have two lines sewn very close together. You have finished sewing the understitching, which is a second line of stitching that holds down the seam to the facing. And if you flip it over on the good side, you actually won't see it once the facing is pressed underneath. So the understitching is not shown. So take your skirt, slide it inside the tailoring ham, start at one of the open edges where we have our pretend zipper, and take that end and fold it underneath so that it is hidden where the zipper would be. Give it a steam, and you should be able to see the understitching line at the very top of your skirt edge and press it. Because if you see it on the inside, that means on the good side, the outside, you don't see it. So press the entire top of the skirt with the understitching line showing on the inside. Keep moving the skirt so that you can get at it. And eventually you'll get back to where you started. And you'll have that edge sticking out. So again, fold it underneath so it lines up on the edge of the fabric, and press that down. And now I need to tack it down. If I don't tack it down, this will come up every time, which would be annoying. So put it under the foot, line it up close to the edge, about halfway down where that zipper would be. Don't sew it on the very top. It's thick there from the seam and it will get stuck. Sew it down about 2 or 3 centimeters. Put the needle in, sew down 3 to 4 stitches, reverse back 3 to 4 stitches. Normally you would have a zipper here and you would have a zipper line that you would sew these stitches right into that stitching line, so it would be camouflaged. And if this were your sample, you'd use the same color thread. I'm purposely using a different color so you can see it better. Do the same thing to the other side where the zipper would be, the opening. About 2 or 3 centimeters from the top. Go down 3 or 4 stitches, reverse back, pull it out, cut those threads. And then the edges of the facing should be tacked underneath so they won't open. You also want to sew a stitching line at the 2 seams. So slide it under the foot, making sure the bottom part stays out of the way. Don't do it at the very top. Do it about 2 to 3 centimeters down. And this time I will do it right in the seam. It's called stitch in the ditch. 3 or 4 down, 3 or 4 back. And again, if I were using black thread, you wouldn't even notice it. Do it on both sides, cut all threads, attach it to a sample sheet, and hand it in for evaluation.